We'll break down the matchup, take a little deeper look at it. Josh Paunil, PhillyMag.com. Birds 24/7, all Eagles, all the time, right now on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. What's going on, Josh? How are you, pal?
I'm doing good, guys. How you doing today?
Everything's good. Interesting matchup here because I don't think the Falcons have the sex appeal that the high-profile teams do. They're 6-3. Part of it, I guess, is because they started off really well last year and then kind of went down. But you could argue last year that opening game kind of set the tone for the season for the Eagles because people thought the Eagles would go down there and beat that team. And, you know, they didn't win. And then that just kind of set off the whole season to kind of, you know, just go down the drain. And this Falcons team you would think is better than the team that they played last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think this Falcons team is absolutely better. I mean, their offense is just on a different level. You know, last year, the thing that really put them over the top and the reason why the number one offense in the NFL, points per game, yards per game, is because they had the top players on the team had a meeting with Kyle Shanahan because last year the players weren't confident down there in Atlanta that all of their skill sets were being best used. And so Kyle Shanahan kind of adjusted the offense. I mean, it already obviously had some success last year, especially with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. But this year it's just a whole nother level. And this is definitely going to be a different team than the Eagles faced a year ago.
Yeah, and when you look at this Eagles team, you know, they're at the midway point, Josh. So kind of give us like an overview of some of the things you see over the course of the first half of the year that they can improve on as we hit the back end of the year. Because one of the things, you know, I noticed watching a lot of football and over the league is a lot of times, a lot of teams have guys in the first half of the year that don't really contribute all that much. And then in the second half of the year, you know, for whatever reason, they know the playbook better, the coach trusts them more, they just got better because they developed. You see the second half, there are guys that add to a team and help them get over the hump a little bit. So do you think that's the case, number one, with Philly, and some of the things that you think that they will improve on from the first half into the second half?
Well, I think the second half will be similar to the first half just in the fact that I think 8-8 is probably a fair projection for them going forward. I mean, you have the last game of the season for Dallas may not mean much to them. The Packers and Bengals games are a lot less scarier than they were before the season started. So I think record-wise it could be similar. But the one area of growth I see is Zach Ertz. And I know Eagles fans, they've heard that so many times. This is Zach Ertz' breakout year, or he's finally going to deliver. But in my mind, I mean, the first 6 or 7 games of the season, he missed a couple, but the first 4 or 5 games he played well. He was getting open. Him and Carson Wentz just didn't have a connection, and Carson wasn't finding him. And Doug and Frank Reich even put that more on Carson than on Ertz, the fact that Ertz didn't produce very much. And so I think you'll continue to see him getting open, but now that they've been able to develop a little chemistry, have that practice time. I mean, Carson, keep in mind, you know, with all the criticism Carson has gotten recently, which is obviously deserved just with the interception, but the guy has only practiced with the Eagles' first-team offense for about 2 months, which isn't a very long in the NFL. So I think that chemistry and communication with him and his weapons, particularly Zach Ertz, are going to improve, and because of that, you're going to see Zach Ertz's production go up in the second half of the year.
Hey, there's something that you touched on after listening this week to some of the pressers in terms of Andy Reid, Doug Peterson. And you wrote about developing a dynamic receiver, and a lot of people are kind of waiting for Dorial Green-Beckham. And then last week, it was kind of like, whoa, this guy's not really giving it at all. But he seemed like a fan favorite for like the first half of the year. And then last week, the one week, it was like, oh, now I understand. But when you watch Green-Beckham and when you get a sense from the coaches, is he a guy that this second half of the year, is he one of the guys I'm kind of talking about that they really hope they get more from the second half?
I mean, I definitely think they hope they get more out of him in the second half. But to be honest with you, I think they look at him as more of a long-term project. I think the big thing with him is they wanted to spend an entire offseason with him so they can work on the finer parts of, not just for him to be, entirely familiar with the playbook and those things, but just route running, making sure everything is crisp, how he comes out of his breaks. So I think they view him as more of a long-term guy where they really hope that after 6-7 months of working with him, when there aren't any games, when they can just focus on him, and then that can really spur his growth. But short term, Bryce Treggs, to be honest with you, he's the guy that is probably going to be the most involved relative to the first half of the season. I mean, who will have the biggest jump in targets, since obviously he was only active for one game. But they're going to want to get him more involved. Now, the way the Giants played allowed them to get Bryce Treggs more involved in this offense. But I do think that they're going to try to just attack the field, attack down the field more often in the second half, because the longer you go without attacking downfield throughout a season, the field just keeps shrinking on you, as Frank Reich mentioned today. And that really makes it even tougher for a rookie quarterback trying to develop or trying to get accustomed to the speed of the game and to all the different things defenses are doing. So I view DGB as more of a long-term guy. And while they hope, him and Bryce Treggs can give him a little more in the second half of the season, to be honest with you, I think if you are counting on someone to step up among Carson Wentz's targets, it has to be Zach Ertz.
Josh Paunil with us, PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. And Josh, how about at the halfway point, your evaluation of Carson Wentz and where he is halfway through his rookie season?
Well, I mean, when you look at all 8 games, I've been pretty impressed. I mean, if you had to give that guy a grade, I would say at least a B+, if not a little bit higher. He's obviously hasn't done as well the last few games, but when you look at the entire picture, especially where you thought he would be, I mean, this is a guy that, he started 1 year, 1 full season as a high school starting quarterback, a year and a half in college at the FCS level. So I've been very impressed with how he's been able to make the transition from the levels that he's come from, the speed of the game, what he's been able to read. And perhaps, I guess, the most encouraging thing to me is how all of his teammates and coaches have responded to the intangibles that he has. Not just the work ethic, but kind of how he has a steadiness about him that really calms a lot of his teammates. He never gets too high or gets too low. You can rely on kind of how he's going to carry himself. And then also just the intelligence that he has. So, I mean, you've seen him make mistakes, but I don't think he's made any mistakes that you wouldn't expect a rookie to make. And he's definitely made a lot of plays, a lot of throws, and even just a lot of audibles that you wouldn't necessarily expect a rookie to make. So I've been pretty impressed by Carson Wentz through the first 8 games.
And you write that Doug Peterson wasn't willing to say it after the Eagles-Cowboys game, but now a couple weeks later, he's basically come out and admitted that Darren Sproles is the new number 1 back, that he's replaced Ryan Matthews at the top of that depth chart. What does that mean for Ryan Matthews going forward, and the other guys too, Kenyon Barner and Wendell Smallwood?
Yeah, well, I think now Darren Sproles is certainly, as of now, the number 1 running back. I do think you'll see a little bit less from him just in terms of the snaps. One of the reasons he played so much against the Giants was when the Eagles got down so much, it really kind of got them out of their game plan. They felt like they had to make up the points quicker, which obviously is also why Doug Peterson was so aggressive and went forward, or kept going forward on 4th down. So that kind of got them out of, instead of doing 2 tight end sets where Ryan Matthews would have been in the game, they went more 3 receiver sets, passing sets with Darren Sproles. But even though Darren Sproles will have a little bit less, he'll still be the feature guy. Ryan Matthews, I'm not sure why you give him a ton of carries in the 4th quarter at this point going forward. So even if you give Sproles a little bit of a break, you could see a guy like Smallwood or Barner. I mean, Smallwood, really every time he's been in, he's given you that production. And going back to, I want to say the Steelers game when Ryan Matthews was hurt, he was a guy that got most of the carries and not Kenyon Barner. So you would expect Wendell Smallwood to be the guy that if they give one of those younger guys some more snaps, it's going to be Wendell Smallwood and not Kenyon Barner.
Just an interesting side note here, because these two guys, the Eagles are having all sorts of running back questions and issues. McCoy and Murray, those 2 guys, either one of them, pick which one. They probably would have fit in pretty good here.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think while a lot of Eagles fans would love to have LaShawn McCoy back, I'm not sure the love for DeMarco Murray is quite as strong after his time in Philly.
Yeah, and the Murray, I mean, McCoy, I mean, because that's one thing that I point out a couple of weeks ago, and then looking at this team halfway through the year, Josh, this team, or the makeup of this Eagles team reminds me a lot of the McNabb teams, where Jim Johnson's defense really carried the teams. They blitzed. I mean, they caused turnovers, and they really leaned on them. And then you had McNabb, not great weapons, just go out there and make a play, go out there and do something. But he had Westbrook. This team doesn't have Westbrook. So they have Wentz. It's like, go out there and make some plays. They're asking him to throw so much, but he doesn't really have that safety valve yet to kind of lean on. And I think that's something, the running back position in this league is kind of like antiquated almost. Just find somebody. But that seems like it's something that's really missing from this team.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, the biggest priority going into the offseason has to be getting Carson Wentz the weapon. I mean, I think they have a significant need at cornerback going forward, but you really want to give Carson Wentz some help. I mean, there was one play, I think it was Nelson Aguilar, he turned maybe a 5 or 6 yard catch into like a 15-yard catch against the Giants, and I was so surprised when I went back and rewatched that on the film, because you don't see that very often from the Eagles, whether it's at wide receiver or running back, just guys that are going to make big plays for their quarterback. And that's, I mean, to be honest with you, it's just puts so much more pressure on Carson Wentz, makes him feel like he has to do even more. I mean, if you look at this game in particular, Julio Jones, if you're Matt Ryan and you're not sure where to go with the ball, just throw it up to Julio Jones. Now, obviously, it's going to be tough to get. I'm not saying they need Julio Jones in particular. They don't need the best receiver in the league, but they need someone to where Carson Wentz just has nowhere to go, but he can just count on the guy, just throw it up, make a play, or just audible, hand it off, and count on his running back to make a play for him. None of his receivers rank in the top 75 in the NFL in yards after catch, which is kind of crazy. I mean, that seems very hard to do, that no one ranks in the top 75 among Eagles receivers. And so you just have it, whether it's running backs or wide receivers, he just doesn't have that much help. So, people talk about how his average yards per attempt isn't that high. Well, that's because he doesn't have a lot of guys to, attack downfield with or make big plays with. And so when you're relying on a quarterback to get you just, 5 or 6 yards every play and just get the first down and not really go after the big play, it's much harder to do that consistently, obviously, when you don't have the option to get those chunk plays that can really spark a drive.
Josh Paunil with us as we break down the Eagles and the Falcons coming up on Sunday at 1 o'clock at Lincoln Financial Field, and talk a little bit about Matt Ryan and the Falcons' attack. Devontae Freeman, Tevin Coleman. By the way, is Tevin Coleman going to play in this game?
That's a good question. I mean, I talked to a Falcons beat writer yesterday. It sounded like he would not play this week. I'm not sure if that's set in stone, but it sounded like it was more likely he won't play on Sunday.
And to get back to what you were talking with Mike about a second ago, it's not like Wentz can lean on some stud running back like Dak Prescott can with Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why Dak Prescott, that his numbers have been so much better, is because you have that great offensive line. You have Des Bryant, Cole Beasley, Jason Witten. You have Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, he almost has too many weapons. But the one good thing for the Eagles is that if you need a running back, this is the year to go get one in the draft. I mean, obviously a guy like Leonard Fournette is going to be one of the top picks off the board, but there should be 3 or 4 very good running backs in the draft that you can get even later in the first round, like Dalvin Cook out of Florida State. Where is he going to go in the first round? And with that Vikings first-round pick looking better and better after these last 3 weeks, now that they're 5-3, they could miss the playoffs. That's very realistic. And so if you get a draft pick in the teens, that's a spot where you could get a really good running back, which obviously Carson Wentz would love right about now.
It'll be interesting to see, Josh, if the running back position becomes in vogue again, because you didn't draft him in the first round. You just kind of find them. It'll be interesting to see if teams go back to that route and start to get back into getting stud running backs.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, because I think at least in this next year it's going to be a lot more popular, because when you have the success like Ezekiel Elliott, Gurley, I mean, when you see other teams actually use the first-round picks on running backs, teams are going to start thinking, well, maybe we shouldn't be so conservative with where we go get them. So with how good the running back class is this year, it will definitely be in vogue to get that. But long term, I still think running backs will be relatively devalued. But this year, they'll be much more emphasized than in the past few drafts.
Josh Paunil, PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. One area this particular week, last week you've got a chance to look at Ertz, and he was really a much bigger part of the offense. But looking at Atlanta and where they struggle, they're not very good against the tight end. You would think, again, that they can go right back and get Ertz involved again this week.
Yeah, and that's the thing with this Atlanta team. I mean, the reason why their defense is so questionable is because it's so young. I mean, they play 4 rookies. They play 3 second-year guys. I mean, one of their safeties, he's been in the league longer than 2 years, but he's a converted safety from cornerback. So you have a team that is mostly made up of very young guys. And the thing that they really struggle with, especially in that San Diego Chargers game when I think the Chargers were down, 17 and came back to win, a lot of it had to do with the breakdowns in the secondary, and those linebackers and the cornerbacks and the safeties, because they run a lot of that 3-deep zone. So when you run a crossing route against them, the defenders have to pass off these guys. And because these defenders are so young, they'll have miscommunications. They won't, just do things properly. So you have these crossing routes that go for big gains. And obviously a lot of times that's Jordan Matthews in this Eagles offense, but Zach Ertz, they're going to have him running those types of routes, especially off play action. So Zach Ertz, he had 8 catches, 97 yards this past week. He could easily have another 100-yard game this week, when you consider how young and inexperienced these linebackers and the secondary is.
Josh Paunil, and we talk offense, defense, but I always like to mix in a little special teams talk as well, Josh. And I found this stat interesting. The Eagles lead the NFL in both average starting field position after kickoff and opponent average starting field position after kickoff. And, yeah, we've gotten on the special teams coach for the missed punt assignment in Dallas. And obviously there's been some miscues on special teams, but for the most part they've been pretty exceptional. Does that play a factor on Sunday?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one thing that the Eagles have been able to count on for as long as Dave Fitt has been their special teams coordinator, is just the strength of the special teams. I mean, even this past week, you saw after they had, a couple of big kickoff returns for touchdowns early in the season, this past week they had Darren Sproles' punt return went about 60 yards, something like that. Now, obviously, the offense wasn't able to capitalize on that. They didn't get any points out of it, but it doesn't negate how well the special teams played and how big of an impact they can make, because we talk about how Carson Wentz doesn't have any weapons. Well, if we're being honest, Darren Sproles as a punt returner or Wendell Smallwood as a kick returner, that's probably the best weapon he has, because those are the guys that can really make big plays for him. And so you see it's not just the returners, it's the blocking and the blocking schemes that they do. So that could absolutely play a large role in this game. Because of the advantage that the Eagles should have over special teams in terms of against Atlanta.
Well, it could be a shootout type of game here. We'll see how the Eagles offense, if they can keep up with the high-flying Falcons. It's at Lincoln Financial Field this Sunday. You can listen to the game on 97.3. Josh Paunil, PhillyMag.com, Birds 24/7. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks for having me, guys. Always enjoy it.